Thank you so much for going through this process with us, and thank you for participating in our art test. Unfortunately, you were not chosen to move forward. These are the words that I heard when I applied for a position at 𝐂𝐲𝐵𝐴 as a volunteer concept artist. Well, it's easy to feel brokenhearted, discouraged, and absolutely frustrated. And I do want to say that all of these emotions are more than okay to feel and go through, especially when experiencing a rejection to something that you love like this. There is also a positive spin on this, a way to grow and take a light turn from the rejection and the bad things that happen when we're applying for our dream careers. I want to connect with you and share my story of this rejection and what I learned from it, because I learned a ton and I think you can too. And we've all been there as an artist or creative, going to apply for a job you're really excited about or even a dream job and you just don't make it. But I want you to know that you can grow from this no matter what the case is, no matter what the rejection is or how big it is. Let me reel it back and tell you a bit more about the story to show you how it all got to this point. If you know anything about the games industry right now, it is an absolute disaster. It's been in a rough state for a while, so it can feel super crippling to not only the senior artists who have been in the industry for years and years and years with experience, but especially as well for junior artists or people who are just now entering the industry. Is there any hope for the people who are just starting out who have absolutely zero experience? This is a very common problem in the industry right now, and honestly across the job market right now. So that's why a studio like 𝐂𝐲𝐵𝐴, the one I applied for, had formed. They realized this crazy debacle that everybody's in, trying to figure out what should we do, and the founder actually started the studio in hopes to create a portfolio and carve her own path for what seems like an impossible industry to make it into right now. So she put together a full team of junior artists, specifically focusing on the fact that this is a junior level position, developing and creating a game called 𝐈𝐦𝐻𝐵𝐴, which is in the productivity game market, a game that you can have up on your desktop while working on other tasks or projects. It's a solar punk sci-fi aesthetic and themed game. They saw all the flaws in the gaming industry and they're like, let's change this. And they are not the only studio and group of people who are starting to do this. The indie game revolution and indie game studios is on the rise. Understanding the difficult state that the industry's in, I'd started doing everything I could to continue growing and learning and developing my portfolio. And that's when I found 𝐂𝐲𝐵𝐴 through a game development podcast that I had been listening to continue moving towards growth. So I joined 𝐂𝐲𝐵𝐴's Discord, super excited about the idea that they had with their studio. I love that they're supporting juniors to try and get experience to actually create a game or create something to make it into the industry. And I was there for that ping when they're like, hey, guess what? We have this position, this position, this position, and of course the last position was an artist. And I was like, yes, this is the moment I've been waiting for. Something to start growing my portfolio on an even deeper level. Because working on your own solo portfolio can be great, but knowing ultimately that the end goal would be to work at a studio, having a team to hold me accountable and work through an actual development pipeline would be super valuable for my path. So I was super excited and I was like, this is the opportunity. I am so excited. I think I have a real shot at this. So I filled out a form. I talked about my experience, sent in my portfolio, and I got an interview, and I was super pumped and also super nervous because I'm like, especially in at least at that time, a phase of life where I was very nervous about those super professional, like minute interactions. I was like, oh no. I was very, very nervous for the interview, but it went pretty well. Of course, in hindsight, you feel like, oh, I could always do better, but I feel like I did the best that I could at the time, and that's what matters. And to my surprise, about a week later, I got invited to do an art test to further test the candidate's skills so they can figure out who would really be the right fit for their game style. So part one was, please take the concept provided and recreate it in the style of 𝐈𝐴𝐻𝐵𝐴's in-game sprites. They show an example sprite that's been provided and incorporate frontal perspective, appropriate color palette, line weight, etc. You may use the colors provided and embellish with colors of your choice. Additionally, any graphics shown on the screen are up to you. I was like, yes, frontal perspective, probably the easiest thing they could have given me. I was very nervous it was going to be like, turn this into a 3/4 view, and I was definitely gonna be a little bit more nervous about that direction. It's mostly gonna look flat in a frontal perspective, so I was like, yeah, I got this. So I began drawing and I immediately realized that it was not as easy as I thought it was going to be. My mind was boggled as I kept trying to figure out how to draw this flora scanning and seed processing unit in front perspective. And I struggled a lot more with the line art than I thought because I'm used to doing a super painterly style that doesn't have a very hard focus on line art, but I did have a lot of experience doing quick line art for game jams in the past, so I figured I'd be able to do it. After about an hour and a half or so, I finally got everything in what seemed to be the right spot, or as best as I could. I even added this cute little cactus with a face, and I was like, oh, it's gonna help make the design stand out. It was one of those like me moments, artist, add your own expression, which is super important when you are submitting and doing things like that, adding your personality and not shying away from that. And after doing that, I actually got an idea to do additional seasons, which it was very close to Halloween around the time of doing this. This was like middle of October. And then I was like, of course we gotta do Christmas if we're doing Halloween, because that's like the next big holiday and there's so much you can do with Christmas. So I added my own little additions to help make my submission stand out, because I figured amongst all these other submissions, if everybody's skill level's around the same, how do you do something that's next level to actually help you stand out? Okay, so I got that part, and on to part 2 of the art test. Hold on, we need another sip of tea. Hits every time. All right. Part 2 of the art test. Please use any of the provided graphic assets to create a simple composition with your finished sprite. I must have missed the simple the first time around, because now I'm reading it, I'm like, oh. If it were a marketing piece for a game. An example marketing asset has been provided. Additionally, you may create any graphic assets you'd like to accompany them. The background's up to you. Flat color, gradient, simple sketch, anything goes. Me being the super ambitious person that I was like, I'm gonna do a whole like more concept painterly piece. We were really only supposed to take about 3 to 6 hours on the art test, which was in the given email. And I also had like a billion other commitments because it was literally my birthday during the 3 days of the art test. So I had birthday plans with my mom, with my partner. We went to a Porter Robinson concert, and I was like, I mean, I could ask for extra time because they said you could, but 3 to 6 hours, staying within that limit. So I was just like, you know what? We'll do the best we can and we'll see how it goes. So I started this painting very ambitiously, thinking, okay, I got this. And then I realized a few hours in that there was no way that I was going to be able to finish it in the given time. So then I switched to a lot simpler of a plan, which actually worked out very well and continued that seasonal aesthetic throughout and made even a few extra banners than just the ones asked for. Overall, it was a very fun and enjoyable process doing this art test. I thought I did a good job. To be honest, I wasn't sure if I would make it. I thought it was possible, but I wasn't quite sure if I would land it. And then I got the email that I mentioned earlier from the creative director telling me that I was in the top 2 candidates. It was a very hard choice, and she gave me amazing feedback. So huge shout out to her, because not every person or studio does that or has the time to do that. So if you can reach out and ask for feedback on your work when submitting to a studio or applying for any type of job, volunteer, a job that's not volunteer, anything like that, asking for feedback is really going to be helpful. So let's go over some of her feedback, which was super valuable, and some of the lessons that I learned from all this story, and share that with you so you can learn a little bit more about how you may be able to get past some of that art rejection or applying for dream jobs. What can you do in the face of rejection and moving forward? So the first thing she called out was the perspective. It's so sad. And the line art as well. The two I was already like, yeah, those are the things I could use work for sure. They were inconsistent, which I completely agreed with, and realized that my process for drawing wasn't as crisp as I wanted it to be, and that there were a lot of holes and points that needed to be brought to the next level. And next, she pointed out how my art was a bit more of a cute style than a sci-fi, which is true. I always end up kind of pouring this cuteness into the things that I draw, and sometimes you do have to reel back those things depending on the style that you're working on, right? They thought that I could incorporate the color palette into the art more. But regardless, she said it was a really strong submission and it was a very hard choice. I'm really glad she took the time to leave that feedback and let me know this was still really good, but here are the things you can actually move forward with. And their studio highly values that education and that growth, which is one of the reasons that I like them so much, is because they value that and they are willing to give you that time of day and that feedback. And that's the kind of place you would want to work for, where they have that honesty level with you for how you can grow and improve. So hearing some of this was very, very hard, but definitely helpful in the next path and steps that I needed to take to become a better artist. So of course, the first thing was like my process is all over the place. Definitely something I want to work on moving forward. Next would be taking another fundamentals or perspective class. to really start locking down more perspective. Another pipeline I'm very interested in trying out is going from 3D to 2D, where if you have basic 3D modeling skills, you can 3D model an environment or an object in a 3D program, and then you have the free perspective. You can take a screenshot at any angle and then paint on top of that object. This is a very valuable process that actually a lot of studios use to get that perspective done quickly. Plus, already getting some of those 3D assets in the 3D program, if it's going to be a 3D game, can be a very helpful base to work off of as well. And next is style studies, learning how to do specific styles and really sticking to that. So finding things that are maybe completely out of my comfort zone, like very non-cutesy. Not necessarily horror, because I'm not a big fan of horror, but maybe something in a lot grittier or a darker style. But those are some of those key pieces, but I want to dive even deeper now into some of these lessons and takeaways. So the first thing that we should all keep in mind is that applying yourself and sending your work out there to be judged by the world can be a very powerful way for you to take this feedback and to grow internally as an artist. Without taking that step, say I was too scared to submit my work, oh my gosh, words, too scared to submit my work or to apply for anything, I would have never gotten those key pieces of feedback that I need to learn and go forward and improve on. Next is to do research on your weaknesses. Get in there, queen, king, and tackle them. Seek critique, face your weaknesses, get out there. I know it's scary, but it's so worth it when you get better and you get to see that improvement. So I'm going to be punching fear in the face, and I'm going to be hopping into the Pirate Software Game Jam in January with my cousin, and we're literally going to make a game that's focused on perspective. That way it'll allow me to directly jump right in and face my weaknesses with my art. And the next lesson is not making it into one thing can help you decide or gain clarity on what you actually want or what your next steps are. I came to this huge realization as I've started to grow my portfolio and be like, okay, I'm interested in going for a concept art job in the future. I realized, why am I going to go work for someone else again when my whole end goal is to work for myself anyways? I can cut that step out and start my own studio, which is something, if you've watched my channel or stopped by my Twitch streams, shout out to my Twitch streams if you want to come hang out with us, is I've been wanting to build a studio for a long time. So this rejection actually gave me more clarity on what my future steps would be. So I realized creating my own studio could be a better route moving forward, or starting to work on my own game rather than someone else's. It could be a good next step, even over working on my portfolio, because I can use everything I'm making for my actual product in my portfolio as well. Two birds, one stone. Next is to know that most rejection is not personal, especially when it comes to the workplace. I know there are times too when thinking about bringing people into my studio, it's why would we choose this person over this person? It's not always a personal thing. Sometimes it's just they have maybe that one extra skill we needed, or they filled in that one extra hole that we needed. Rejection usually focuses on the technical aspects of things you actually could be doing better, or skills that you may need to pick up in the future. Next is that perseverance is a valuable skill and one to be valued more than actually getting something or achieving the thing itself. Perseverance and progress kind of go hand in hand. Especially in the creative industry, you are probably facing shutdown after shutdown, rejection after rejection, and it can feel exhausting. So perseverance is a super valuable skill, and it's going to carry over to other areas of your life beyond just art. And last is that it teaches you to value your effort, not just the outcome. Again, focusing on the journey and the process. Through this process, I really appreciated watching my creative mind come up with these additional solutions, like creating the seasonal assets, which might not have been something I would have thought to do with my own art on my own, or for something like a school assignment, right? This kind of pushed me beyond and made me think more of how can I actually stand out amongst the other candidates. So it challenged me to push myself outside of my box. So I encourage you to get out there and reapply, apply for another position, apply for a new position, or not necessarily even applying, like going and actually working on your creative project that you've been wanting to. Even if you're scared that you're going to put it out there and the market might push it out and say no, or it might face rejection, or you might not get the job, because you owe it to yourself to keep pursuing your creative ideas and see what happens. Failure gives us more information on what we can do better and how we can move forward with strength. It's not something that's meant to just put us down and keep us down. It actually gives you the tools you need to become better. And if you're looking for a way to plan your projects for 2025, I have just the video for you where I actually walk through a plan with me process on a site called Trello with how to organize all the creative ideas in your mind. Make sure to check that one out so that you can be prepared for 2025. And honestly, just get out there and go slay. Thanks for listening to my story, and I'll see you.